What's up guys, and welcome to today's video. Today we're going to talk about tenses, namely past tenses, present tenses, and future forms. So I'll start by using the past simple and the past simple tense. I'll use a real life example. So I went to a Chinese restaurant last Saturday for my girlfriend's birthday. That's the past simple tense. For the past continuous tense, I was living in Potts Point when I got my first job as a director of studies, and I was 28 at the time. So for past continuous, we just use was plus the verb ing. And past continuous usually talks about an activity that was in progress at some time in the past, but it's usually interrupted by some kind of past simple action or event. The next tense that I'm going to use is the past perfect, and the past perfect is usually, we use had plus the PP or the past participle to describe something that happened in the past before another past event or action. So, for example, for me, I had done about 5 days of research before I sent off my quote for my last job. So, before I sent off that quote, I had done about 5 days of research. Had plus the PP or the past participle done equals the past perfect. The next tense that I'm going to use is the past perfect continuous, and the past perfect continuous is had plus been plus verb ing to describe an activity that happened before another action or event in the past. So again, we have two things that happen in the past. Let me give you a real life example. I had been living in Malta for about 5 years, from the age of about 19 to 23, before I decided to come back to Australia. So I grew up in Australia, I went to Malta, and I had been living in Malta for about 5 years before I decided to come back to Australia. That's the past perfect continuous. Moving right along now to the present. So I'm going to start with the present simple, just like I did with the past simple. And for the present simple, again, I'm going to talk about work and what I usually do. I work from Monday through to Sunday, but on Wednesdays, I usually start work at about 11 a.m. So I work, present simple, from Monday through to Sunday, but on Wednesdays, I'm usually a little bit lazy on that day, so I usually start work at about 11 a.m. on Wednesdays. The next tense that I'm going to use is the present continuous. And the present continuous, in this case, I'm not going to use the present continuous to talk about an activity that's happening right at the moment of speaking. Rather, I'm going to use it to describe an activity that's temporary and happening in the general present. For example, reading a book. At the moment, I'm reading a really good book. It's called The Business Owner's Guide to Profit. So there I'm using the present continuous with the verb to be plus the verb ing. I'm reading. The next tense I'm going to use is the present perfect simple. And with the present perfect simple, we usually use it to describe something that happened in the past and is connected to the present. And the thing about the present simple is the present perfect simple is we usually use the present perfect simple when the time period is unfinished. And that can be, the unfinished time can be today, this week, this year, or even your lifetime. My life is unfinished. So let me give you an example to talk about my life experience. Well, in my life, I've owned 4 different cars. So I've owned 4 different cars in my life. A Honda Jazz, a red one. Before that, I had another Honda Jazz. It was a black Jazz. Before that, a Seat Marbella. And before that, an Alfa Romeo. That was my first car. So I've owned 4 cars in my life. The next tense that I'm going to use is the present perfect continuous. And the present perfect continuous really just emphasizes the activity, but it's very similar to the present perfect simple in that it talks about an activity that started in the past and continued until now, or has continued until now, and will probably continue into the future. So I've been living in the inner west since the beginning of this year, actually. So I have been plus the verb ing equals the present perfect continuous. Moving swiftly along now to the future forms, and I'm going to start with going to, probably one of the most common future forms, and going to really is used most of the time for plans, and in fact future plans. For example, this Christmas I'm going to stay in Sydney. Not much choice. So my future plans for this Christmas, I'm going to stay in Sydney. With going to, you'll hear a lot of Aussies, a lot of Australians, and also people from the United States use gonna when they speak. There's nothing wrong with that. So for example, this Christmas, I'm going to stay in Sydney. The next future form that I'm going to use is will, and will is usually used for simple predictions about the future, and we usually combine it with think. I'll give you an example, and again, it's going to be a real life example. I think that 2021 will be a better year for everyone. It's a simple prediction about the future. The next future form that I'm going to use is the future continuous, and that includes will plus be plus verb ing, or plus the verb ing. In real life example, this time next year, so let's say December of 2021, I think I'll be lying on a beach in Bali. So the future continuous there is will plus be plus verb ing, and it's being used to describe an activity that will be in progress at some time in the future. In this case, the time period will be December of 2021. The next form that I'm going to use, in fact, it's the penultimate form, the second to last form that I'm going to use, is the future perfect simple, and that includes will plus have plus the past participle, and it's used usually to describe an action that will be complete before or at some time in the future. Let me give you an example of the future perfect. Again, this is true for me, may not be true for you, but it's true for me. After I upload this video to YouTube and other social media platforms, I will have produced 7 different videos for Pinnacle English Learn. Okay? So the last future form that I'm going to use is the future perfect continuous. And the future perfect continuous, it's very similar to the future perfect simple, but really the emphasis is on the activity here rather than the action. So an activity that will be complete before or by or at some specific time in the future. So by the end of this year, I will have been living in Sydney for almost 21 years. Will have been living. So we have will plus have plus been plus the verb ing there, used to talk about an activity that will be complete before some time in the future. So before the end of this year, or by the end of this year, I will have been in Sydney for almost 21 years, guys. That's a long time, probably longer than some of you have been alive. So that just about does it for today. Hopefully we've given you some tools that you can use in everyday situations when you speak English. Remember to use them for situations or use them in examples that are true for you. In this way, I think your learning of English and of English grammar will be a lot more effective. Take care and bye for now.